Sometimes the most profound moments in life come wrapped in the simplest packages. On a crisp autumn morning in Chicago, 1997, 9-year-old Sarah Mitchell clutched her mother's hand as they walked into the United Center. The air buzzed with excitement, filled with the chatter of basketball fans streaming through the entrance for what seemed like a routine meet and greet with the Chicago Bulls. But for Sarah, this wasn't just another day, it was everything. Her small fingers traced the edges of a worn Bible in her backpack, a gift from her late father. The same Bible that had become her constant companion since that terrible night 6 months ago when cancer took him away. Sarah had spent countless hours reading it, trying to understand why God would take her daddy so soon, why he would leave her with so many unanswered questions. The crowd moved forward in waves, and Sarah's heart raced with each step closer to the court. She wasn't there just to meet Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player in the world. No, Sarah had a mission, a question that had been burning in her heart since that fateful night in the hospital when her father squeezed her hand one last time and whispered, "Keep believing, princess." Sarah's mother, Ellen, noticed her daughter's nervous energy. She knew that look, the same determined expression Sarah wore when she would sit by her father's hospital bed, reading Bible verses aloud even as he drifted in and out of consciousness. Ellen hadn't been sure about bringing Sarah here today. The event coordinators had made it clear, this was a basketball meet and greet, not a time for personal conversations. But something in Sarah's eyes when she asked to come, that mix of hope and desperation, made it impossible to say no. The United Center's massive interior opened up before them, the polished court gleaming under the bright lights. Sarah's grip on her mother's hand tightened as they joined the line of fans waiting to meet the players. Her other hand remained firmly planted on her backpack, where that precious Bible sat waiting. As they inched forward, Sarah could hear snippets of conversation from those ahead of them. Everyone seemed to want something from Michael Jordan, an autograph, a photo, a moment of connection with greatness. But Sarah wanted something different, something more. She remembered the nights when her father would watch Bulls games from his hospital bed, his weak voice still finding the strength to cheer when Jordan made an impossible shot. "See that, Sarah?" he'd say, his eyes lighting up. "That's what believing in yourself looks like. That's what faith can do." The line moved steadily forward, and Sarah began to rehearse her question in her mind. It wasn't about basketball or championships or even about being the greatest of all time. It was about something her father had told her during those final days. Sometimes, God sends his angels in unexpected packages. As they got closer, Sarah could see Michael Jordan now, towering over his admirers, that famous smile brightening the faces of everyone who approached him. He was dressed casually in jeans and a white shirt, looking somehow both larger than life and surprisingly approachable. Ellen felt her daughter's hand trembling and knelt down beside her. "Remember, sweetie, Mr. Jordan is very busy. We might only have a moment with him." But Sarah's eyes remained fixed ahead, that same unwavering focus she'd inherited from her father. Finally, they were next in line. Sarah watched as Jordan finished signing an autograph for the group ahead of them, his laughter echoing across the court as he shared a joke with a young fan. Then, as if in slow motion, his gaze turned to Sarah. In that moment, something changed in the atmosphere. Maybe it was the way Sarah stood there, small but unbending, or perhaps it was the look in her eyes, a look that seemed far too serious for a 9-year-old. Jordan's smile softened, and he leaned down slightly, as if sensing this wasn't going to be a typical fan encounter. "Hi there, little lady," he said, his voice warm and genuine. "What's your name?" Sarah swallowed hard, her hand instinctively touching her backpack where her father's Bible rested. "I'm Sarah," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sarah Mitchell." Jordan's smile widened, but his eyes noticed something, a shadow of grief perhaps, or a weight too heavy for such small shoulders to carry. He'd seen that look before, in the children's hospitals he visited, in the faces of young fans who came to him carrying burdens far beyond their years. "Well, Sarah Mitchell," he said, kneeling down to meet her at eye level, "it's very nice to meet you." The event coordinator stepped forward, ready to move the line along, but Jordan held up a hand, silently asking for a moment. There was something about this little girl that made him pause, that made the usual rush of these events seem less important. Sarah's fingers wrapped around the strap of her backpack, and she took a deep breath. This was her moment, the one she'd been preparing for since her mother told her about the meet and greet. The question she'd been holding on to since those final days in the hospital, watching her father's faith remain unshaken even as his body failed him. "Mr. Jordan," she began, her voice growing stronger with each word, "I need to ask you something. Something important." Jordan nodded encouragingly, his full attention focused on the small figure before him. The usual buzz of the crowd seemed to fade away, creating a bubble of silence around them. "My daddy." Sarah's voice caught for a moment, but she pressed on. "My daddy went to heaven 6 months ago. He loved watching you play. He said you showed him what it means to have faith, to believe in something bigger than yourself." Ellen's hand squeezed Sarah's shoulder, offering silent support as her daughter continued. "The night before he left us, Daddy told me that God sends his angels in unexpected packages. He said sometimes the answers we're looking for come from places we'd never expect." Sarah's hand moved to her backpack, touching the Bible inside once more. "Mr. Jordan, I need to know, do you believe in God? Do you think he really has a plan, even when things hurt so much?" The question hung in the air, its weight far greater than the simple words that formed it. The event coordinator shifted uncomfortably, but Jordan remained still, his eyes locked with Sarah's, seeing in them the same questions he'd wrestled with in his own journey of faith. The crowd around them grew quiet, as if sensing the gravity of the moment. Here was Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player in the world, faced not with a question about his legendary career or his countless achievements, but with something far more fundamental, a child's searching heart, looking for hope in the midst of loss. And in that moment, as the bright lights of the United Center shone down on them, something extraordinary was about to happen. Something that would remind everyone present that sometimes the most powerful moments in life have nothing to do with basketball at all. Michael Jordan had faced countless moments that defined his career, game-winning shots, championship victories, and challenges that seemed insurmountable. But here, in the United Center, faced with a 9-year-old girl's question about faith, he encountered something that transcended sports entirely. The silence that had fallen over the crowd was heavy with anticipation. Jordan's expression shifted, the practiced smile of meet and greets giving way to something more genuine, more contemplative. He adjusted his position, still kneeling at Sarah's eye level, and took a deep breath. "You know, Sarah," he began, his voice carrying a warmth that seemed to fill the space between them, "your daddy sounds like a very wise man. And you're a very brave girl for asking me this question." Sarah stood perfectly still, her small hands now clasped in front of her, waiting. The Bible in her backpack seemed to press against her spine, a reminder of all the times she'd read it with her father, searching for answers in its pages. "I do believe in God," Jordan continued, his voice taking on a tone rarely heard in interviews or press conferences. "I believe in him with all my heart. And let me tell you why." He gestured to the court behind him, where so many of his legendary moments had taken place. "You see all of this? The lights, the court, the championships? None of it happened just because of me. Every single day, I step onto that court knowing that my talent, my strength, my ability to play this game, it all comes from something bigger than myself." Sarah's eyes widened slightly, and Jordan could see in them the same hunger for understanding that he'd once felt in his own moments of doubt and questioning. "When I was younger than you are now," he continued, "my father taught me something I've never forgotten. He said that God doesn't always give us what we want, but he always gives us what we need to become who we're meant to be." Ellen watched as her daughter's shoulders relaxed slightly, the tension she'd been carrying beginning to ease. Around them, fans who had come for autographs found themselves witness to something far more meaningful. "Your daddy was right about angels coming in unexpected packages," Jordan said, a gentle smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Sometimes they come as friends who show up exactly when we need them. Sometimes they come as challenges that make us stronger. And sometimes—" He paused, meeting Sarah's gaze directly. "Sometimes they come as questions that brave little girls ask exactly when they're supposed to." Sarah's lips trembled slightly, but her voice remained steady. "But why did God have to take my daddy? He was good. He believed. He prayed every day. Jordan's expression softened further, and those close enough could see the glimmer of moisture in his eyes. He thought about his own father, taken too soon, and the questions that had haunted him in the aftermath of that loss. "Sarah, there's something I learned when I lost someone very special to me too," he said, his voice carrying a weight of personal experience. "Sometimes the hardest part of faith isn't believing in God's power, it's trusting in His plan, especially when that plan includes things that hurt our hearts." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver chain with a pendant, something he often carried with him during games. "See this? This was a gift from my father. When I lost him, I was angry. I had questions just like you do now. But then I remembered something he always told me: faith isn't about having all the answers. It's about trusting even when the questions seem bigger than we can handle." Sarah's hand unconsciously moved to her backpack again, where her father's Bible rested. Jordan noticed the gesture and smiled knowingly. "You know what I think?" he continued, his voice growing stronger. "I think your daddy knew something important. He knew that faith is like a seed, it needs both sunshine and rain to grow. The sunny days are easy to trust in, but it's the rainy days, the hard days, that really make our faith stronger." The event coordinator had long since given up trying to move the line along. Something extraordinary was happening here, something that transcended the usual boundaries of celebrity meet and greets. "When I step onto this court," Jordan gestured around them, "I'm not just playing basketball. I'm living out my faith. Every dunk, every shot, every moment, it's my way of showing gratitude for the gifts God gave me." Your daddy saw that, Sarah. He understood that faith isn't just about what happens in churches or what we read in the Bible. It's about how we live every single day, how we use what we've been given. Sarah's eyes began to fill with tears, but they weren't tears of sadness. There was something else there now, a glimmer of understanding, perhaps even the beginning of acceptance. "Mr. Jordan," she said softly, "do you think my daddy can see me from heaven?" Jordan's own eyes welled up, and he didn't try to hide it. "Sarah, I don't just think it, I know it. And I bet he's so proud of you right now, watching his brave little girl asking the big questions, keeping her faith even when it's hard." He reached out and gently took her hand. "You want to know something else? I think God has a special plan for you. It takes a special kind of strength to ask the questions you're asking. That strength doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from above, and it comes from the love your daddy poured into you." The United Center, usually filled with the roar of basketball fans, was now silent except for the sound of sniffling from those close enough to hear the conversation. Even the most hardened sports reporters present found themselves wiping their eyes. "Your daddy was right about another thing," Jordan continued, reaching into his other pocket. "God does send angels in unexpected packages. And sometimes—" he pulled out a fresh white headband, the kind he wore during games. "Sometimes he sends answers in unexpected ways too." He held out the headband to Sarah. "This isn't just any headband. This is the one I was going to wear in tonight's game. But I think it belongs with you now. And every time you look at it, I want you to remember something. Faith isn't about never having doubts or questions. It's about having the courage to keep believing, keep asking, and keep growing, just like you're doing right now." Sarah took the headband with trembling hands, and as she did, something shifted in the atmosphere of the United Center. This wasn't just a basketball star giving a souvenir to a fan. This was a moment of divine appointment, where sports and faith, grief and hope, questions and answers all converged in one sacred space. Ellen's eyes met Jordan's, and in that glance passed a world of gratitude. She saw in him not the basketball legend, but a vessel of comfort for her daughter, an unexpected answer to countless prayers. The silence in the arena continued, heavy with the weight of what had just transpired. Sometimes the most powerful moments in life come not with thunderous applause, but in the quiet spaces where hearts connect and healing begins. And in the United Center that day, something far more significant than basketball was taking place. A little girl's faith was being restored, one gentle word at a time. The impact of what had just transpired began to ripple through the United Center like waves in a still pond. Sarah stood there, clutching the white headband in her hands, her tears now flowing freely, but these weren't tears of grief anymore. They were tears of revelation, of understanding, of a heart beginning to heal. Jordan wasn't finished though. Something deep within him, perhaps guided by a force greater than himself, told him this moment needed more. He reached for Sarah's backpack, gesturing gently. "May I?" he asked softly. Sarah nodded, slipping the backpack from her shoulders. With reverent care, Jordan helped her take out her father's Bible. The book was well-worn, its pages marked with countless sticky notes and underlined verses, a testament to a father's devotion and a daughter's inheritance of faith. "You know," Jordan said, carefully holding the Bible, "my father used to tell me that everything we need to know about life is right here in these pages. But sometimes, we need someone else to help us see it clearly." He began to flip through the pages, handling them with the same precision he brought to his game-winning shots. He stopped at a particular page, and a small smile crossed his face. Here it is. Isaiah 41 verse 10. This verse got me through some of my toughest times. His voice took on a gentle, almost musical quality as he read, "Fear not, for I am with you, be not dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you, yes, I will help you, I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." Sarah mouthed the words along with him, and Jordan noticed. "You know this one, don't you?" She nodded, her voice barely a whisper. "Daddy used to read it to me before every hospital treatment." The crowd around them had grown larger, drawn by the unusual scene of Michael Jordan reading scripture in the middle of a meet and greet. But no one dared interrupt. They were witnessing something sacred, something that transcended celebrity and sport. "Sarah," Jordan continued, his voice carrying a strength that seemed to fill the entire arena, "your father knew something powerful. He knew that these words aren't just ink on paper. They're promises that God makes to each of us, especially when we're hurting." He turned to another page, this one marked with a small photograph serving as a bookmark. It was a picture of Sarah and her father, both smiling broadly at what appeared to be a Bulls game. Jordan's eyes softened as he looked at it. "Your daddy brought you to games, didn't he?" Sarah nodded, a small smile breaking through her tears. "He said watching you play was like watching a miracle. He said it reminded him that God can do anything." Jordan's own eyes glistened as he carefully placed the photo back in the Bible. "Your father was teaching you something precious there. He was showing you that God's glory can shine through in unexpected places, even in a basketball game." He stood up slowly, still holding the Bible, and looked around the United Center. "You see all of this?" He gestured to the championship banners hanging from the rafters. "People call these my achievements. But your daddy understood what I've always known. Every one of these banners is a testimony. Every game, every shot, every victory is a chance to point to something bigger than myself." Ellen watched in amazement as her daughter's expression began to change. The heavy cloud of grief that had shadowed her face for 6 months was beginning to lift, replaced by something new, understanding, perhaps even the first glimmer of joy. Jordan knelt back down, opening the Bible to its first blank page. He pulled out a pen from his pocket, not the one he used for autographs, but a simple black pen he carried for personal use. "Sarah," he said, his voice full of purpose, "I want to write something here for you. Something I want you to remember every time you open this Bible." The pen moved across the page with deliberate care, and those close enough could see what he was writing. "Dear Sarah, your father was right. God sends his angels in unexpected packages. Today you were my angel. You reminded me why God gave me this platform. It's not just for basketball. It's for moments like this, where faith meets courage and questions meet hope. Remember, God's plan is bigger than our pain. Your daddy knew that. He lives on through your faith, your questions, and your courage to keep believing. When you watch me play, don't just see a basketball player. See a man who, like you, believes in something bigger than himself. And know that your daddy is watching too, proud of his brave little girl who dares to ask the big questions. Keep believing, princess. Heaven's got a starting lineup, and your daddy's right there, cheering you on. With faith and love, Michael Jordan." As he wrote the final words, Jordan noticed something he hadn't seen before, a small note written in the margin of the Bible's first page, in different handwriting. It was from Sarah's father. To my dearest Sarah, when you read these words, remember that faith is like a basketball game. Sometimes we're winning, sometimes we're down, but we never stop playing. God is our coach, and his game plan is perfect, even when we can't see the whole court. Jordan's hand trembled slightly as he read those words. He looked at Sarah, seeing in her eyes the same fierce determination he recognized in himself, the will to believe, to persevere, to find meaning in the midst of life's toughest challenges. Sarah, he said, his voice thick with emotion, your daddy was the real MVP, most valuable parent. And he left you the greatest playbook of all. He handed the Bible back to her, now containing both her father's legacy and his own words of encouragement. The event coordinator, who had been standing back respectfully, was wiping tears from her eyes. Even the security personnel, hardened by years of celebrity events, found themselves moved by what they were witnessing. Mr. Jordan, Sarah said, holding the Bible close to her heart, do you think God sent me here today? Jordan's smile was both gentle and certain. Sarah, I don't think he sent you here. I know he did. Sometimes God's greatest assists come through the smallest players on his team. He reached out and gently touched the Bible she was holding. This isn't just your daddy's Bible anymore. It's your game book for life. And just like I study my playbook before every game, I want you to read this, knowing that every word is part of God's perfect plan for you. The atmosphere in the United Center had transformed. What had started as a routine meet and greet had become a moment of divine appointment, where sport and faith, grief and hope, questions and answers all converged in one sacred space. And as Sarah stood there, holding her father's Bible and Jordan's headband, something profound was happening not just in her heart, but in the hearts of everyone watching. They were witnessing the truth that sometimes the greatest victories don't happen on the basketball court, but in those precious moments when faith finds its way home through unexpected messengers. The story wasn't over yet. In fact, it was just beginning. Because sometimes the most powerful testimonies come not from the moments of victory, but from the quiet spaces where hearts are healed and faith is restored, one gentle word at a time. What happened next in the United Center that day would be talked about for years to come, not in the usual highlight reels of spectacular dunks or game-winning shots, but in quiet conversations about faith, hope, and the power of divine timing. Jordan looked at his watch, then at the event coordinator, and made a decision that would further cement this moment in history. Sarah, he said, reaching for something in his pocket, there's a game tonight. Would you and your mom like to watch it from my personal suite? Sarah's eyes widened, and Ellen gasped softly. But Jordan wasn't finished. And I have something else in mind if you're willing. He pulled out his phone and made a quick call, speaking in low tones. When he hung up, his smile had grown wider. Before the game starts, I'd like you to meet some people who I think need to hear your story as much as I did today. Within hours, Sarah found herself in a different part of the United Center, surrounded by a group of children from the local children's hospital, kids who were fighting their own battles, carrying their own questions about faith and pain and God's plan. They sat in a circle, some in wheelchairs, others with IVs, but all with eyes fixed on Sarah and Michael Jordan. You see, Jordan began, sitting cross-legged on the floor despite his tall frame, Sarah taught me something today that I think all of you need to hear. She reminded me that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is ask the questions that scare us the most. Sarah sat beside him, still holding her father's Bible and the white headband. Her earlier tears had dried, replaced by a sense of purpose she hadn't felt since her father's passing. Would you like to share with them what you asked me earlier? Jordan gently prompted. Sarah looked around the circle at the faces of children who, like her, were grappling with challenges no child should have to face. She took a deep breath and opened her father's Bible to the page where Jordan had written his message. I asked Mr. Jordan if he believes in God, she said, her voice stronger now. Because my daddy went to heaven, and I needed to know if someone like Michael Jordan, someone who seems to be able to do anything, ever feels scared or confused about God's plan like I do. The children leaned forward, some nodding in recognition of their own unspoken questions. A small boy with no hair and a bull's cap pulled low over his eyes raised his hand. Do you get scared, Mr. Jordan? Jordan's face softened as he looked at the boy. Every single day, he admitted. Before every game, before every big moment. But that's where faith comes in. That's where I remember what Sarah's daddy knew, that God's plan is bigger than our fears. For the next hour, something extraordinary unfolded in that room. Children began sharing their own stories, their own questions about faith and fear and hope. Jordan listened to each one, but it was Sarah who often spoke first, sharing pieces of wisdom from her father's Bible, now interwoven with Jordan's own words of encouragement. My daddy used to say that faith is like a basketball game, she told a girl who was struggling with her third round of chemotherapy. Sometimes we're winning, sometimes we're down, but we never stop playing. God is our coach, and his game plan is perfect, even when we can't see the whole court. The girl smiled through her tears, reaching out to touch the white headband Sarah was now wearing. Can I be brave like you? You already are, Sarah replied, echoing the words she had heard from Jordan earlier. Being brave isn't about not being scared. It's about keeping your faith even when you are scared. As the afternoon progressed, news of what was happening spread through the United Center. Players arriving early for the game's warm-up stopped by, drawn by the unusual sight of Michael Jordan sitting on the floor with a group of children, talking about faith and courage rather than basketball. Scottie Pippen, arriving earlier than usual, joined the circle. He listened as Sarah shared her father's notes from the Bible, watched as Jordan helped her explain to the children how faith could be found in unexpected places, even in a basketball game. You know what I think? Pippen added, his own eyes misting over. I think your daddy and Michael are right. God doesn't just work through prayers and miracles. Sometimes he works through a basketball game, through a simple question, through a brave little girl who isn't afraid to ask what others are thinking. As game time approached, something had changed in that room. The children who had arrived carrying their own burdens of fear and doubt were sitting straighter, their eyes brighter. Sarah's story, and Jordan's response, had given them something powerful, permission to question, courage to believe, and hope to keep going. Jordan stood up, knowing he needed to prepare for the game. But before he left, he had one more surprise. Sarah, he said, would you do something for me tonight? She nodded, still wearing his headband proudly. Before every game, I say a prayer. Tonight, would you lead that prayer for me and the team? The request brought fresh tears to Ellen's eyes. She watched as her daughter, who just hours ago had been struggling with her own faith, stood up straighter, holding her father's Bible close. In the Bulls' locker room before the game, surrounded by some of the greatest players in basketball history, Sarah Mitchell, a 9-year-old girl who had lost her father 6 months ago, opened her Bible and began to pray. Dear God, she started, her voice clear and strong, my daddy always said you send angels in unexpected packages. Today you sent me Michael Jordan when I needed answers. Please help all the kids we met today to be brave, help the Bulls play their best, and... She paused, then added with a small smile, please tell my daddy I finally understand what he meant about faith being like a basketball game. That night, Jordan played one of the most memorable games of his career. But it wasn't just the points he scored or the plays he made, it was the way he played. Before each free throw, he touched his forehead where a white headband usually sat. After each basket, he pointed upward, but his eyes would drift to the owner's suite where Sarah sat with her mother, her father's Bible open on her lap. The Bulls won that night, but the real victory had nothing to do with the score. It was in the children's hospital ward, where kids clutched their own Bibles a little tighter. It was in the hearts of tough sports reporters who found themselves writing about faith instead of statistics. And most of all, it was in the smile of a 9-year-old girl who had come seeking answers about God and found them in the most unexpected way. Years later, people would still talk about that day in the United Center. Not just about the game, but about the moment when the greatest basketball player in the world knelt down to answer a little girl's question about faith. They would remember how a simple meet and greet became a testimony to God's perfect timing, and how sometimes the biggest questions find their answers in the most unexpected places. Sarah Mitchell grew up to become a chaplain at the same children's hospital where she had shared her story. She still has that white headband, carefully preserved alongside her father's Bible. And on the first page, beneath Jordan's message in her father's notes, she added her own words. Sometimes God's greatest miracles don't look like miracles at all. Sometimes they look like a basketball player taking the time to answer a little girl's question about faith. And sometimes, just sometimes, they look like a daddy's love living on through the game he loved and the faith he passed down. The story of Sarah Mitchell and Michael Jordan became more than just a viral moment or a heartwarming tale. It became a testament to the truth that faith, like basketball, is about more than just the final score. It's about the courage to keep playing, the wisdom to trust the coach's plan, and the understanding that sometimes the answers to our biggest questions come through the most unexpected messengers. And somewhere, in that great arena of heaven, a proud father watches his little girl continue to share the lesson he taught her, that faith, hope, and love are the greatest game winners of all.